Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, depending on where you're joining us from. Thank you all so much for being here today. We're beyond excited to showcase a little bit of what's possible with Smartsheet, specifically for our state and local government partners. The goal of today is to showcase what I'll call the art of the possible, right? So these demonstrations aren't meant to be a final solution, but more to spark ideas and showcase how we approach executing work within Smartsheet and providing the visibility and the automation that is so desired. So with that said, we have a lot of great content to share with you today. I'm going to speak quickly through this first section so we can get into the fun stuff. With that said, here's a quick slide, a quick legal slide before I dive into the agenda. Great. So we'll get into a quick round of introductions on who we are, as well as a little bit of background into Smartsheet, followed by a demonstration on how to integrate data from external systems. We'll utilize contract management as the example use case for that. Then we'll take a look at volunteer onboarding and simplifying that type of solution for your teams before shifting to a more holistic grant and portfolio management solution. We'll close with a look into Smartsheet's overall security controls before finishing with a Q&A. And actually, after each demonstration, we are going to leave about 5 minutes or so for questions. So please, as we're going through this, if you have questions, don't hesitate to hit that Q&A button, and we'll do our best to cover all of the questions during that time. Sound good? So on to intros. My name is John Martino. I'm an account executive working with our state and local government partners on the West Coast. Joining me today is a powerhouse team of solutions engineers consisting of Amy Nguyen, Angie Andersen, and Erica Takano, as well as our security specialist, Bob Mills. They'll be presenting here shortly and introducing themselves as well. So on to Smartsheet, right? As to who we are, at our core, we are a collaborative work management tool, which is a fancy way of saying that we bridge the gap that exists between traditional purpose-built systems and the dynamic way that work is actually getting completed today. We've been in business for over 18 years. We have over 3,200 employees worldwide, and we have partnerships with major state and local government agencies across the globe, including a few of the logos that you see here. As to why customers choose to partner with us, number one, we're user-driven. So we want to empower everybody with an intuitive platform and no-code capabilities so you can automate steps and design solutions to fit your dynamic work needs. It's adaptable, so it can really adapt to any type of work and continuously evolve to meet those changing requirements. It's collaborative, so making sure we're bringing together the right people at the right time, wherever they are, so the workforce as a whole is aligned. It's secure, so you can once again empower your teams, but govern with confidence through administrative visibility and security capabilities. Smartsheet can reliably scale from small team-based deployments to large deployments that activate more of the organization to truly meet people where they are. It's unifying, right? Bringing together people, information and data, conversations, content, other solutions to align everybody with their work and really provide a common single source of truth, right? So to simplify that, from a high level, there are really three main objectives for why people partner with Smartsheet, right? The first is to standardize the tools and methodology used across your agency, division, department, again, with the goal of creating one single source of truth for everyone to operate from. Data is live. We're able to create a clear window from the top down so anybody at any time can understand what's going on and where. Second is focused around project portfolio management, grant solution management, contract management, whatever it might be, implementing systems and processes to drive efficiency, but also enhance collaboration, enhance communication, and provide that visibility at all stages, right? So the idea here, we want to automate the tasks that can be automated and make it easier for all stakeholders to better understand what work needs to be completed and when. And third is that resource management piece. So making sure that we have the right people in the right place at the right time, and we're making data-driven decisions when it comes to grant or project approvals and hiring needs. And then being able to seamlessly integrate that piece into our project and or grant planning process. From a use case perspective, we have implemented workflows across every department, whether it's Public Works, Department of Health, Employment Services, Central IT, Department of Education, you name it. The beauty behind Smartsheet is we truly can meet each individual person and each individual group or division, department, where you are, and be a single source of truth for the end users all the way up to the executive council, right? So follow me on this dream for a second. Imagine you are in Willy Wonka's factory and you get to ride the glass elevator. In a few clicks, you'll be able to access any part of your agency or organization to understand what's going on, where the roadblocks are, why they're occurring, and how to fix them. That's what the future looks like. The days of long email threads, multiple email chains, unnecessary meetings, wasted time are a thing of the past, right? There's going to be one single source of truth that spans across the entire agency, bringing everyone together under one umbrella. So with that said, I'm excited to turn it over to Amy to kick us off with contract management. So Amy, I will kick it over to you.
Perfect. Thanks, John. All right. Hello, everyone. As John mentioned in our agenda, we'll be discussing first how to use Data Shuttle. And our example today is how to use Data Shuttle for managing all the contracts that might be living across various systems or Excel spreadsheets at your organization and bringing them into Smartsheet for one source of truth so that you can understand where contracts are, when things might be renewing, when things are expiring, so that contracts don't fall through the cracks and you're doing your due diligence to make sure that you're keeping up with those. My name is Amy Nguyen. I'm a solutions engineer based in Austin, Texas. I'm very excited to be chatting with you all today. So let's hop right in. Okay, so just some context here. I already kind of did it in that first intro slide, but again, we're going over using contract management so that we can have visibility into the multitude of contracts that might be tracked across different systems or different Excel spreadsheets if you're doing it on a more manual basis, and creating a way to set up reminders for the team when contracts might be expiring, set to expire. You need to reach out to the person to renew it, to get new things signed, right? So things don't fall through the cracks. So our solution for handling that tool or to handling that process is going to be using Data Shuttle. Data Shuttle is a fantastic tool for aligning data, again, across multiple systems of record into one singular view. Data Shuttle is an automated process so that you're not having to manually import new information, copy paste information into a master spreadsheet and Smartsheet. Data Shuttle knows where to read information from. It could be CSV file, Excel files that live in OneDrive and SharePoint. You might be attaching them just directly in Smartsheet. We set up that where to read the information from and automatically read the data from that file and then bring it into Smartsheet automatically on a schedule basis so that you're not having to manually make those updates or set calendar reminders to do that yourself. So Data Shuttle is a way to make what could be a complex, very manual process into a streamlined, automated toolkit or configuration so that you're not having to worry about that. You're letting the system do the work for you. So let's hop into a demo and get an idea of what this looks like, specifically within contract management. So as we hop over into the product, you'll see that I'm just diving straight into an example dashboard that helps me understand the status of the contracts that we have, what we have upcoming renewing, how much money we're planning to spend over the next couple months, whatever data is going to be important for you to understand about the types of contracts that you and your team manage. So this is the current state of information as we have contracts currently living in Smartsheet. But again, those contracts are ever changing. We are onboarding new vendors all the time, signing new contracts. Contracts are expiring, things are renewing. So I want to make sure that this dashboard is automatically kept up to date with that information. I want to have that real-time visibility without having to manually update the data source myself. right? So let's look at the data source that helps support the information that flows onto this dashboard. This is the current data set. You'll see I have a short list of contracts just for illustrative purposes today. I have about 21 contracts. And they are in various stages, right? We signed them all throughout the year. Things are expiring at any given time. I want this data to be kept up to date, not manually by myself, not going in and typing this information, but just based off the data that our teams are already updating in other sources, like our ERP system, for example. So how do I get the information in Smartsheet updated based off my ERP data? Well, using Data Shuttle is going to rely on CSV files or Excel files or Google files or Google Sheet files. So in my case, let's say that I have an export of my ERP contracts, and I'm choosing to display that information, in this case, in Google Drive. So this is my file. You'll notice that there are some changes. There are some differences between my most recent export from my ERP versus what currently lives in Smartsheet. I have several more contracts. So in this case, I have 26 contracts. And then some of my existing ones have expired. Some of them may have new dates. Maybe we have extended one of our contracts recently, for example. And again, I'm entering that data in my ERP because that's my source of truth. But I want that information reflected in Smartsheet so that I have those beautiful dashboards, so I have those notifications coming in. So how do I get this data updated in Smartsheet? That's where our Data Shuttle tool comes into play. So this is Data Shuttle. And I want to call out here that to use Data Shuttle or to build these connections that allow us to update information in Smartsheet based off data from an external system, I do not need to be a coder. I do not need to be a programmer. I do not need to be the smartest person in the world to get this set up. I have this really fantastic, easy to use workflow configuration where I just click and set up my workflow. So the first step is choosing where your data source lives. In my case, it's from Google Drive, but you have several options. So if you are offloading data from an external system into SharePoint or OneDrive on a regular basis is probably what I see the most often, or out to Google Drive in my case, you can configure your workflow to know where to pick up the new most recent file from. And then the second step is, of course, where should this data update in Smartsheet? In my case, I have a sheet called Contracts from ERP. Pretty straightforward here. And then how do I want the information from that external CSV file to write into my Smartsheet document? In my case, I'm going to merge the data. So this means that if data from an existing contract that already exists in Smartsheet is being updated from ERP, so for example, the status of a contract has changed to expired, we extended a due date recently, those existing rows will automatically be updated in Smartsheet. And I'm also making sure that any new rows or any new contracts in the ERP are also added to Smartsheet. So we're merging the data. But another option that you have is to replace the data. If you want to just get rid of everything on your sheet and just replace it with whatever is coming from your ERP, you have the option to do that as well. Next step, you have the ability to filter your data. So let's say from my ERP, I have thousands upon thousands of contracts that live in that tool, but really I only want to bring in the contracts from the last 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, or whatever time frame it is. Or maybe you only want to bring in contracts that are owned by a particular person or relate to a particular vendor, right? If you want to filter the information from that large CSV file and only bring in certain bits of that into Smartsheet, you have the ability to set up those filters so that you're only bringing in data that makes sense for you and your team. The next step is choosing the mapping. So this is really the bread and butter, I guess, or the main point of using Data Shuttle is mapping the columns from your ERP, or I'm sorry, in my case, my ERP data, my export file, and then mapping those to the columns that live in Smartsheet. Now, you'll notice that my column names are the exact same between my export file and my Smartsheet document, but they don't have to be, right? If my, for example, the contract description field from my ERP, I wanted to just call that description in Smartsheet, I could set that up. That's not a problem. I just want to make sure that the data that exists from my Excel sheet maps to the appropriate organized place in Smartsheet. So just want to call that out. You can even have columns that live in Smartsheet that are not being driven by anything from your Excel file, right? So I'm calculating a health in Smartsheet. I'm not capturing a health value in my ERP, and that's totally okay. I could do that just in Smartsheet. I don't need anything to map to that column. I can just manually update that from Smartsheet itself. So lots of different ways to help manage the data flowing back and forth between the two tools. You can run this on a schedule. You can run this as often as every single day, as frequently as every 15 minutes if you wanted to make sure that your data in Smartsheet is as close to real time as possible. I'm going to turn off this schedule so that I don't overwork our system, since this is just a demo environment, but you would be more than welcome to set that on a schedule so that once you set it, you can just totally forget about it. And that's really the last step of building out your workflow. Technically, you do have this option to insert expressions. I have found that using this expressions option is become moot after we have the ability to set up column formulas in Smartsheet. But we keep this in there in case you want to add any formulas to your sheet to make sure things are automatically calculating in. You're just going to name your workflow, save it, and that's it. That workflow is set up in your Data Shuttle environment. It's automatically running in the background if you set it up on a schedule. So anytime changes are made to your data source or you're exporting new information from, in this case, my ERP, whenever that schedule is next set to run, the information will automatically update in Smartsheet. Now, because I did not set up the schedule, and because we're in a demo, I want to automatically update this right now. I can always go into my Data Shuttle workflow or Data Shuttle environment, find the workflow, and manually run it. So if I need new data right now for a meeting that I have in 10 minutes, for example, I can go ahead and manually run it. I'm going to give this a quick refresh. We can see that the run is currently in progress. And if I head back to my sheet, after a few moments, I should see, right, this status of this contract move from active to expired. I should see this legal retainer end date automatically update, and I should see those new rows come in just a moment. And once this data is updated in Smartsheet based off the updates from my ERP file, my dashboard will then automatically update. So let me head back to Data Shuttle. I'm going to give this a quick refresh. I can see that it has successfully run as of just a minute ago. So if I head back to my sheet and give this a refresh, there we have it. I don't have 21 rows anymore. I now have 26 rows. I have more contracts that have been expired, and I have new end dates for some of my contracts. This is an exact reflection of that most recent file that I pulled from my ERP. And if I head back to my dashboard and give this a refresh, oh, it looks like it already refreshed for me. I can see those new contract numbers automatically update. My values have gone up because I have more contracts available now. And all of this is in real time. All right. Well, thank you so much for tracking on this Data Shuttle workflow for me. I know that we have a couple of questions. Oh, actually, before we get to questions, my apologies, we have a couple minutes till we need to do that. So some key takeaways on Data Shuttle. Again, this is a tool that's going to allow us to centralize data across multiple platforms into a single source of truth. So that does mean that you could have multiple Data Shuttle workflows looking at Excel files pulled from multiple sources, then pulling into one sheet in Smartsheet. We are eliminating those manual processes and allowing for a more automated routine to help reduce administrative burden, to help reduce the risk of error that might occur when you're manually updating or copy pasting things into the system. So ultimately, we're creating a more efficient process, again, that is less prone to error. So while we talked about using Data Shuttle today as an example for bringing in contracts from ERP systems, I just want to show another or give you some ideas on where Data Shuttle might make sense. Perhaps you're tracking invoices, and you want to track the statuses of those invoices and have a pretty dashboard in Smartsheet that allows you to see what the status of those invoices are, who we're still waiting for updates from so that we can task our teams with following up on those, right? That would be a great Data Shuttle use case. Maybe you're tracking actual time from another tool and you want to bring that time tracking data into Smartsheet so you can run analytics. Or maybe you have other data from your ERP, accounts payable systems, CRM systems that you want to provide updates for. Those are all fantastic examples of when to use Data Shuttle. All right. Happy to help answer any questions that have come up. I see we have a few here.
Yeah, Amy, this is Chaz. We've got several that came in that Tim and I have been answering live. So thanks so much, folks. Keep those coming. But there are a few that made a little bit of sense to answer verbally here. In fact, two of them are a little bit softballs because I think you just covered one. Someone asked earlier about using Data Shuttle to bring Excel-based information into Smartsheet versus the Google Sheet and ERP scenario that you mentioned. A few minutes later, we got someone asking, will Data Shuttle work with OneDrive? So Amy, would you mind sharing that with the class?
Yes, absolutely. So while my example was I was pulling information from an ERP into a Google Drive specifically, it could be a file that lives or an Excel file that lives directly on your computer. It could be an Excel file that lives in OneDrive and SharePoint. Those are all options for setting up your Data Shuttle workflow. So if I head back into editing my workflow and looking at my source data, that source data can pull from a Smartsheet attachment, which is an Excel file that just lives on your computer, OneDrive, SharePoint, or Box. So those are all options to pull data in from. Fantastic question.
And I've got one more to bring up live, and then Tim, if you want to come off mute or if you just want me to speak to it, is there a demo version that we could test if it is applicable to our business process? And I'll just go ahead and answer that. I would recommend that folks get in touch with their account teams so that you could be guided to what is most relevant to the plan types you're already on. As we saw from some questions, so many folks have different ways of using Smartsheet, ways of accessing it. So we want to make sure we give you the most recommended information. But yes, a lot of our clients do want to test it on their workbooks or their data sets, and we do generally support that. So just let's make sure to align the right tools for the plan and license type that you're on today.
And I had one question with Data Shuttle. Amy, could you go to the filters there? Great question. Could we see an example of filters? If you just hit, another filter. So any of those columns inside of that sheet there, you're able to kind of select, and then you'll see a similar filtering selection as you would normally in a sheet. So we could say contract status is equal to pending or not equal to pending. Then it will only select those items to pull in via Data Shuttle. So very similar filtering mechanism as a sheet.
And you'll notice if I have multiple filters, so contract is pending, end date is perhaps in the past or whatever value that I want to provide, I can then say for the filter logic, I want to filter rules 1 and 2 if both of those are met, or I can do 1 or 2 and do either of those. So that is how you could, for example, set up your filters. Fantastic questions. All right. Any other questions that we should be answering live, Chaz or Tim?
I think we are good on the live questions, Amy. Thank you. We'll finish answering these as we go. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I will pass the mic over to Erica now. Erica, want to take it away?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. I will share my screen. All right. Hi, everyone. My name's Erica, and I'll be going over how we can streamline the volunteer onboarding process. As a solution engineer at Smartsheet, I work specifically with state and local government customers to really understand their pain points and use cases and come up with solutions together. So this one is based off of previous customers, and we'll be going through that today. I do want everyone to please keep in mind that we will be focusing on a specific use case of dynamic view for this session, but we will also call out additional examples of how it can be utilized across different organizations or in different scenarios. Again, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A button. So in this session, we'll be focusing on volunteer onboarding. We will address how we can utilize dynamic view to onboard volunteers and showcase how each person, a volunteer and also a volunteer coordinator, can interact with the onboarding process while maintaining confidentiality of the underlying information entered and in the sheets. So just a quick overview of dynamic view. It is a tool that allows you to manage multi-step processes by sharing only what is needed to the right people at the right time for viewing or editing. For this use case, we will be protecting sensitive information such as volunteer applicant information with identity-based access, giving the volunteer access only to their application information. From there, we can simplify that information by enabling the volunteer to sign up for open shifts without the ability to change the shift information. And then finally, utilize a multi-step interaction so that volunteer can see their application status and once approved, has access to sign up for those open shifts. Let's jump into the demo. So starting off, I am a volunteer applying for a healthcare support role. I can come directly to my volunteer application portal and start to fill out my volunteer application form. The Smartsheet forms can be embedded into dashboards or web page, such as an intranet for easy access. And we can also require information that's being embedded into the application with the red asterisk. So without that information, I would not be able to actually submit this form. From there, I can select my specified criteria to finish out this application. And with this, I wanted to include some of my certifications, maybe a background check document if that's required. And I'm able to directly upload those with my application with the file upload button. From here, I just add my BLS provider card and submit that. Once it's submitted, the attachment will also follow that application through the process. So it's easy for me to fill out. I understand what information is required and necessary to complete that application. So there's no confusion or additional requests for information. Once that has gone through, I can reload the right-hand side frame here, and it shows up within my view. So this, again, is showing me only my application. If I were to apply to multiple of those applications would show up. And again, all of the volunteers can apply through this one portal, and we will all be seeing different information. We will only be seeing our own applications as it is reading the logged in user's email address. From there, additional columns have shown up. That is for the volunteer coordinator to use, but I'm unable to edit any of that information, such as the approval, or edit any of the information entered. I am, however, able to add additional attachments. So let's say I wanted to attach my background check document. I could attach that here without the need to email it to somebody and have them bring it over into the application. And although we are using this portal as an application page for volunteers, many organizations do use this process for things like project submissions as well, utilizing that form for a project submission and then having a status on the right-hand side to be able to see all of the projects submitted based on that specific user or that specific department. So once we've submitted that application, we're going to switch roles here and take the role of a volunteer coordinator to approve this application. So jumping into the volunteer coordinator view, I am able to see all of the information related to the applicants. With this view, I have a few metrics here to help me gauge and understand how many volunteers we might need by specific role type, and also some metrics on how many volunteers we currently have, how many we denied, and how many are open and in the queue. So with this, we have that new volunteer application that I had applied earlier. I can see all of the information related to this specific volunteer, and they are a healthcare support type. It's easy for me to identify that we are in need of healthcare support volunteers, so I want to review this application. With this, I am able to click in and see that additional information that the volunteer had entered in before. And I'm unable to actually edit any of their information, as we would not want to change important information related to that specific person. I am, however, able to verify their license. I check their attachment, and I'm able to see that that attachment is there. I can download it, review it, make sure everything is all good and ready to go. Verify the license, verify they've passed their background check, and approve this application. Once I do that, I can save those changes. And because these changes are being made directly on the sheet level, we can then leverage things such as automations to automatically notify that applicant that they have been approved and give them access to a shift scheduling portal as well. So once that has been approved, the notification to the volunteer can come through in the left rail here as a notification, the volunteer application approved, or many people tend to use Gmail or email instead. We can jump directly into an email. It will automatically notify via email, and they can jump into that portal directly here as well. So now back to that volunteer role. My volunteer application has been approved. I got that notification in Smartsheet and also within my email. I clicked directly into my volunteer portal, and now I'm able to sign up for open shifts. So with this, I can easily access all open shifts related to the volunteer assignment needs. And if you are a more visual person like myself, we can convert that into a shift calendar as well. So it's easy for me to come in and see different information of all the shifts that are open to me. And as these shifts are being assigned out, they would drop off this calendar so that you're not having duplicate entries into a singular shift, as well as not showing any information regarding who is assigned to that shift. For maybe privacy reasons, we don't want to disclose who exactly is going to be on that shift at any given time. So for this case, I am a healthcare volunteer, and I want a day shift spot out of Salt Lake City. I can easily see that there is a day shift available for the healthcare role. Again, all of these different fields can be customized for the calendar as well. Scrolling back up, I want to then actually sign up for that specific role. We have all of the open shifts on the left-hand side, and I can easily apply a filter since I am based out of Salt Lake City. Apply the Salt Lake City filter and look for a day shift that we were seeing earlier on the 18th. Once I click into it, I have my helper text tell me to enter in my information, just my name and email, but I'm unable to edit any of that shift information as we don't want people changing that shift time or the date or the role type. From there, I can just enter my name and my email into the field values. Again, we can also require fields within the dynamic view as well, not only in our forms, but dynamic view. So the volunteer information is required to actually sign up for the shift as well. Once I save, that is then again directly updating in the sheet. What that's doing is that it's now dropping off the shift sign up, because it is now a taken spot. So it is gone from our shift sign up, so no one else can sign up for it. And then it will also fall off that calendar as well, so it'll no longer be seen in that view. Once I do that, I can reload my frame again on the right, and my shift assignment shows up in my right-hand side. With this, I'm able to check in on my volunteer assignments without having to comb through my emails for all of my shift assignments or have anybody, ask. I don't have to ask and reach out for that assignment. I can just access this portal and see what I'm assigned to. Similarly, with the application portal, it's just one user entering into each portal. Everyone goes to the same portal, and it will only show the shifts that I specifically am signed up for based on my logged in credentials. And again, we have kind of been going through different users based on the dashboard that we're in. A lot of the times, this can also be utilized as an individual contributor dashboard in larger organizations to roll up information such as project task information, where maybe you don't want multiple people in different task sheets. You just want them to complete their specific task. We can aggregate that together and load it up into that dynamic view into one singular dashboard for the entire organization to access. This can also be done because dynamic view can be overlaid on top of sheets and reports. Going through, with dynamic view, we were able to apply to a volunteer position, review applications, approve volunteers, and sign up for open shifts without ever needing to go into a sheet or share any sheets with external people. All of the information entered is directly updating one volunteer log sheet and one shift tracking sheet, with the ability for many different users to access and update only the information they need, simplifying the process for every user without the risk of underlying data being exposed, as well as giving us the ability to leverage the sheet automations to send things like the notifications to the approvers, as well as update request. All of that is still able to be used in conjunction with Dynamic View, enabling us to operate more efficiently. And although we highlighted a specific scenario for this case, additional use cases include, but are not limited to, the examples shown here, such as vendor management and producing notifications. And we can jump to any questions.
Yep, Erica, this is Chaz. There's a question that I'll answer, but two of them were specific to the content that you demonstrated. The first question was, is it possible to be sent a copy of the form that you showed early on in your portion of the demo? Correct me if I'm wrong, Erica, I believe that we have a really similar set in the Solution Center that folks can work from. Is that right?
Yeah, we should have the volunteer template, and it should be linked into the registration dashboard that you had access to when you registered. We can also resend that out as well. And we have templates, and volunteer onboarding is one of the templates on there.
Wonderful. Thanks for confirming.
Mm-hmm.
Another question about the way that you ran shift scheduling. There was a question, in this example, is it possible to have multiple volunteers on a single shift? Would it be possible for them to cancel or request a cancellation? And I recall we talked about some of the design considerations. Do you want to shed a little bit of light on that?
Definitely. We could always incorporate a request to cancel box that they could click within that dynamic view, as we were saying, give them access to that within their shift request, as well as requiring an approval for the shift as well. So they could always click that they're requesting that shift, and once it's approved, they could receive confirmation that that shift was truly assigned to them as well. And in regards to shift scheduling, if we are looking at multiple people per shift, I would recommend creating multiple rows for that specific shift and having each of them sign up individually, just so we can see that within the dynamic view instead. That would be my recommendation.
And Erica, I had a good question too that we get commonly that I'll answer as well. So the question was, is there a common best practice for sharing a dynamic view to thousands of users without a common domain name? So yes, we do that at Smartsheet by sharing to Smartsheet groups. You could have one large group or several subgroups. And in the settings over in sharing, down just a few boxes there, we can share to groups as well as individuals. We would recommend that for non-common domain names.
And I'm going to chime in with a few more answers before we move on. Thanks, Tim and Erica. First question there, Erica shared quite a bit about user interactions. So someone named James asked a question, would the applicant need a Smartsheet account or can you just send them the form via email? Really good question, and you've got a lot of options. So Smartsheet does have ways to collaborate with folks who do not have a Smartsheet account whatsoever. And those web forms where folks are filling in information, those are URLs that can be shared quite broadly. There are settings for how you want folks to access that form, whether or not you want them to log in. When we're talking about viewing a dashboard or viewing a dynamic view where Smartsheet actually has to know who that person is in order to present them the most accurate information, that's an example where they would require a Smartsheet account. However, that almost always does not require something like a paid license. That is generally a free collaborator. I have some personal experience here I want to share. I recently collaborated with my county on HUD's required point in time count, and I want to offer a comparison. I was a volunteer, and we ran into some hassle because of how difficult it was in their Microsoft-based solution to get new users in. Very capable system, very locked down. Smartsheet was actually used as a part of their volunteer sign-up process, so I did a version of what Erica showed you here. And while they did have to make me an account for small portions of that, it was very easy and it allowed them a bit more flexibility within the line of business rather than back in central IT, where of course those folks have other things and other levels of governance that they're a little bit more worried about. So again, I'd encourage folks to work with their account team, specifically your customer success manager if you already have some of these capabilities, but if you're exploring them for the first time, back to someone like John. That's going to make sure that we're mapping exactly what your folks need to do to exactly how they do it in our platform. A couple more questions have come in as we've been answering them. So one of the ones I want to, and perhaps Tim, Erica, in case I missed something, you can help me chime in live here. When creating views where users can access and modify a complex sheet and seeking to only show what's needed, what are the pros and cons between using a dynamic view versus building reports for that purpose? And what I'll start with is the fact that when you are using a report in core Smartsheet, you are also sharing that underlying information. And if folks are well acquainted with Smartsheet, they know how to navigate and drill in and so forth. So reports are really designed a little differently than other systems. They're not just a visibility layer, they're a way of actually editing the underlying information. Dynamic view circumvents that. It adds a completely different way of sharing, which Erica briefly showed and we spoke about, sharing at the domain level, sharing to specific users, specifically not sharing the underlying data and information. So there are some differences with a report. Again, that might come to life in a more specific demonstration, or again, mapping the correct capability to your specific use case. Related to that, there was a question about, is dynamic view a separate feature from the dashboard for business license users and those widgets? We got a few questions on that topic, so I want to answer two parts. First, the widget. If you'd like to put a Smartsheet calendar or a dynamic view into a dashboard, your answer to that is called the web content widget. It is built into every dashboard and allow you to embed those URLs, and then in a Smartsheet, they'll come to life the way you saw Erica using today. And then importantly, whether you have access to it, dynamic view is not typically part of the business plan. It is generally, I think a few times this has come up, either something that is in addition or as part of your advanced package. So that will be more specific to the account, the way that you are working with Smartsheet. So do find out whether you have access to that. We can certainly help, but it's about having the views, having those advanced capabilities, putting them into a dashboard, and then providing those to those end users. That's what Erica really brought to life for us. Tim, Erica, any other questions or anything you'd like to add to those answers that I provided? Tim, I see you busily answer some other questions here, so I know we got to move on soon though.
I think that was great, Chad. Thanks, Chaz. Thanks for the questions answered. We'll continue to answer these questions as we go along, as the next section gets going.
Thank you. And I will hand it over to Angie.
Awesome. Thanks, Erica. Okay. So welcome to the grant lifecycle demonstration. My name is Angie Andersen. I've been a solutions engineer here at Smartsheet coming up on 5 years. But prior to Smartsheet, I worked at several nonprofits where I would aid in applying for grants. And I also worked at an association where all of the state education agencies were our members. While I was there, we provided consulting and technical assistance services, including helping states plan for their use of federal grant money. And as an organization, we were also primarily funded by grants ourselves. And so I would have loved a solution like this. When I was leaving, we had one Smartsheet license and we're just getting into it. And if I knew what I know now, man, the things would have been so much easier for my life. But back to today's solution. So when we think about grant management, some of the challenges that we hear from customers often are around information silos. Everything lives in different systems. Budget is one place, deliverables are another, progress tracking is another place. Everything is done manually. A lot of updates, a lot of email and copying and pasting. With that leads to data errors where things are sometimes, pasted incorrectly or typos. And just general collaboration is really challenging, especially if you are working with, outside consultants or contractors, or if you're the grantor and, working with grantees and trying to make sure that they're getting you the right updates and information, because both parties are going to have to report out on this at some point. And so that just becomes hard and there's no visibility. So it's really a challenge to, if you can't see the data, to know what course corrections or what updates or changes are needed. And so for today's solution, to help mitigate some of that, we're going to be looking at an end-to-end solution for grant applications and grant fulfillment. Many of you may already be doing some of this today, but we're really going to talk about the value of creating an end-to-end grant management solution in Smartsheet. Firstly, that is really going to be creating that visibility around these processes. That's going to ensure you're applying for grants that align with your agency or department mission and strategic plans, and that also, once awarded, grant deliverables are on track and making an impact in your communities. In other words, the goal is really doing what matters the most and connecting the dots between strategy and execution. So today, in that vein, we're going to be talking about target management. So identifying key grants worth pursuing. Automation. How can you drive process and reduce risk at the same time by automating a lot of these manual tasks that are done today? Grant execution. Instantly collaborate on new grants once awarded. And reporting and visibility, being able to see the data that matters so that you can make some of those course corrections, and reporting out is a lot easier and isn't taking up all of your time. And so part of that, before we dive in, is looking at the structure of the solution, just to give you a context of where we're going today. I know this is small, I promise I will zoom in. But here in this bottom lane, this is our application lane. This can be used for both applying for your own grants, or if you're managing the application process of, some of your sub-grants. This middle lane is going to be grant fulfillment. So once a grant is awarded, how do we manage that? And then portfolio is that aggregate reporting. So if I zoom in, go the other way. Whether you're applying for a grant or managing your own applications for grants you're awarding yourselves, there needs to be an easy way to track all of that, to understand a review process for the grants you receive or the applications you're receiving, and also track, deadlines, due dates for those grants that you may be applying for, some of those, competitive or categorical grants. So if you do decide to apply, it's really easy to have, we call this a toolkit spun up, where I am instantly going to know the due dates. I'm going to have a dashboard to keep me on track. I'm going to be able to have an estimate sheet to help understand kind of what we're proposing with this budget. That is going to lead us up to this portfolio level, where at a whole, we can see both the review process for applications, but also our application pipeline for grants we may be applying to. So really creating some high-level metrics and that visibility we talked about. And then once a grant is awarded, we're going to see this line from grant application and this automation up to fulfillment, meaning we're again eliminating a place where there's a chance for copying and paste or data errors or typos. We already have the data in our system, so why should we have to type that in twice? We're going to walk through how we can automate that process and drive some efficiencies. And then once, we've received the fulfillment information and we've double checked everything and made sure we have all of our I's dotted and T's crossed, creating that toolkit so that everything is in a centralized location, so that it is easy for our team members to go and make updates, that we can either collect deliverable updates from our grantees, or we can report out on our own deliverables. And because it's in this connected environment, we're going to have this portfolio reporting that is just automated. This is going to be, extremely easy and very little lift, because you're already doing this. The system is already doing this for you. So let's dive in and go into Smartsheet. So here's our roadmap. Like I mentioned, we're going to start out with this target management, identifying, key grants worth pursuing, and really drive strategic alignment. So that initial intake application process. Here, I'm looking at a fairly typical, what we call demand intake dashboard. And this is where you can really start to streamline incoming applications, either again for your own applications or managing the subgrant application process. And this is where consistency is really going to be your friend and drive a lot of efficiency. You can make sure you're capturing all of the right information at the right time, so that you're not going back and forth and, things aren't formatted differently. You can use conditional logic in forms. So if I pick, it's an education grant, now there's different fields that populate versus if it's a, transportation grant, then there might be other fields. So that you're always collecting the right data, and you don't have to copy and paste. That's going to feed directly into a sheet. And actually, at the height of COVID, I was working with the Washington State Department of Health, and we quickly helped them set up a solution to manage all of their small business loan applications. And so I think in the first 5 minutes, we got about 2,500 applicants, which was crazy. But all of that to say, Smartsheet can handle that type of load if that should happen. If you think about even, disaster relief and collecting grant information, with FEMA or something like that, or volunteer onboarding, being able to use a form for large populations, you can embed this form straight into your website. So as people go to your website, they fill out the form, that's going to land directly into your intake sheet. And then over here on the right, I'm using a report, and it's grouped by everything that I myself have submitted or requested. But what this does is provides visibility into, again, my previously submitted requests, so that I can create some transparency. I can reduce status inquiries. I'm not emailing people like, what's the status of this? I have everything I need right here to be able to get some answers. We've created a self-service portal that is going to reduce admin burden on your folks reviewing grant applications or submitting them themselves. And this is also another place where we could use that dynamic view that Erica just showed. You could use the dynamic view instead of a report as well, if you didn't want people to have access to that underlying sheet. And then we've got high-level metrics. Because it's all in Smartsheet, we can create some of that additional visibility because everything is standardized. So we are looking at apples to apples. So let's look at that intake sheet. We filled out the form. Excuse me, everything is going to land in this sheet. There's a lot of great information here, but it can be overwhelming, especially, depending on the volume of requests you're getting. So right now I'm looking at this in grid view. I could just as easily switch this to Gantt view to have more of a timeline view. I can also look at this in card view, where now I can, really quickly get these high level totals to understand what's in our pipeline, what's awaiting submittals or approvals, what's already been won and needs a toolkit created for. If I wanted to look at this by status, so we're looking at this by status, sorry. If I wanted to look at this by application lead, I can now understand my team's bandwidth. So it's a little bit easier for me to, drag and drop if some of these folks, we need to distribute the workload a little bit. And then, you could add a prioritization scale to this as well, if that's something that you need to do to make some of those internal meetings or review meetings a little bit more meaningful, but really easy and quick to make changes on the fly. So let's go back to our grid view. And while we're looking at this, it can be, like I mentioned before, helpful to look at, grants by distribution or by funders, or, making sure that we're applying for the right things. With a sheet like this, you could figure that out, but it can take a minute to synthesize everything and actually, glean what information you need to. Instead, we can use Smartsheet to create a dashboard. This is just a visual representation of that sheet. So at a quick level, I can see, again, what's in our pipeline, what needs review, and there may be different metrics on whether you are collecting applications versus whether you're submitting your own applications, but that's totally fine. This is just to give you an idea of what's possible. You may, switch, these are all customizable. So there may be a different way that you want to look at this, and that's totally fine. If we keep going, we can see again, what's that award status? So, are we losing more than we're winning? Do we need to think about, are we missing deadlines? Being able to take that data and turn it into a report so that you're really creating a curated view for your audience, depending on, what they care about. Like I mentioned, kind of that example before, maybe you are submitting your own applications. You're going out and trying to get your own funding. If you've decided, hey, this is a grant that we want to apply for, you can open it up and have a toolkit created so that for every grant you're applying for, you're now going to get an application plan so that you don't ever miss those due dates, that things don't fall through the cracks. You can start to plan your budget. You can create, again, this centralized location where everything you need for this application to be successful is all going to be right here. So let's go back to our roadmap. We've seen how to leverage consistent process to focus on what matters the most. That is going to bring us down to automations. So we've found a grant we wanted to apply for. We've submitted the form. We've applied for it. But now let's take a look at automations to see what an approval process could look like and other ways to eliminate some of that manual work and really drive efficiencies. So if we go back to our intake sheet, I want to highlight here the automations panel. So one, Smartsheet is low code, no code. So you do not need to be an expert to set up automations. A great one is requesting an update. So if you're working with outside contractors and you need updates, every week on a specific deliverable, you can have this set up, or when a specific criteria is met. I see customers use this a lot for every time a task turns yellow, provide an update so that we can get ahead of it before it actually becomes red. I saw one of the questions, apologies, I can't remember if this was in Erica or Amy's demo, but about Teams integration. we can integrate with Teams so that every time an alert is sent, that Teams channel is notified, or you can create a Teams channel specifically for each individual grant. If people are already working in these places and it's going well, we don't want to disrupt that and create, unnecessary bottlenecks. Let's keep people working where they're already being successful and build on that. So people can interact with Smartsheet straight from Teams. If you're working with, a lot of budget issues, you can generate documents to integrate with DocuSign. So there's a lot of options. Again, we'll talk specifically about this approval, but being able to alert someone when a new application comes in and it needs to be reviewed. You can really use this to create that alignment between grantee and grant requirements when reviewing applications to make sure all parties are aware of what's going on and nothing is dropped through the cracks. So in this example, let's pretend that this isn't submitted, that we filled out the form and it's brand new. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. And what that's going to do while it's saving is kick off a process for an alert to me to let me know I need to approve, is this a grant that we want to actually apply for? And so, sorry for the scrolling. Here we've got our approver column. All Smartsheets have different column types. This is a contact list column, meaning while it shows my name, it's actually associated with my email address. So anytime an automation kicks off, it's going to go straight to me. It's also going to go to my email. It's also going to go to Teams if we have it set up there. And so you'll see if I open up my email, we've just got a new one. I can open this up. There we go. Open up this request. We can see, high level information. So I don't even actually need to go in the sheet to know, is this something that we should be approving or not? I can open this up. So this is great too. If you've got, leadership who's constantly in meetings or on the road, they can do it straight from their phone. I can click approve. That is then going to automatically be reflected in our intake sheet. And it will also capture that approval response. So again, that dashboard, the application dashboard we looked at is going to be the metrics will update as changes are made in the sheet. So let's refresh this and we'll see that change reflected here in the sheet. And we might need to give it a minute. My internet has been slow today, so apologies for that. But that's kind of how that approval process works and those benefits of being able to make approvals anywhere that you need to. The other one I wanted to mention is we talked about eliminating the need for manual entry. So one of the other automations we already have set up is this copy row. So anytime a grant has been awarded, we want that to move to our fulfillment intake sheet because we want to kick off that fulfillment toolkit. So we're no longer in the application process, we're in that fulfillment process. And so we need another toolkit, another sheet to make sure that happens. But like I mentioned, we already have everything in Smartsheet. So we shouldn't need to duplicate that entry. So what this automation does is once it is awarded, it's going to automatically move to the intake sheet. So if I change this to awarded and save, and you can also set up other automations like change cell. So if you're not a formula person, that's totally fine. We can use a change cell automation that once this changes to awarded, go ahead and collect the date. So that again, if you're looking for that kind of historical or audit information, you're always going to have what you need. You're going to know what the changes were, who made the changes, when were those changes made. So you can always go back and get any of your questions answered at any given time. So we'll refresh this, but I do have the intake sheet open. And once that comes in, it will come in at the bottom of the sheet. but I already have it set up so that we can kind of see what that toolkit looks like. But as it comes in, you can see all of this is pulling straight from that previous intake sheet. It's all the exact same information. We can see that it's definitely been awarded. Anything on this sheet should be awarded. And then we can set up another review process or approval process to say, hey, before we kick off that toolkit and all of this data is pushed to each of those assets, avoiding duplicating, entry, do we have everything correct? If it is, we can again set up that approval, and now we're going to kick off that toolkit. And so I'm going to pause before we kind of look at the execution of that, just at a high level reviewing how you can leverage the Smartsheet automations to really save time by reducing that manual effort and informing the right people at the right time. So this approach is really going to ensure we're eliminating as many opportunities for typos or, again, anything falling through the cracks, and everyone is aware and on the same page. So like I mentioned, let's move into that execution portion. How can you instantly collaborate on these new grants to really make sure you're able to take action on critical needs and keep all of those deliverables on schedule? We've achieved some consistency in the grant reporting by standardizing this process and automating the flow of data. And so again, all of that approved intake data is now going to push to our assets. So all of this information we didn't have to type in. Every time there's a new grant that we need to track, we don't have to type any of this in. Smartsheet and Control Center will do that for you. The other thing too is you can see we've got everything here that we may need for this grant to be successful. We've created kind of a centralized portal where we've got everything we need. We don't have to spend time searching for it. We don't have to kind of worry where things live, and everything is siloed and disjointed. It's all going to be right here. So through this portal, it's also really easy to ensure real-time view of the progress across the grant. So we can see, anytime there's a change made in that schedule, it's going to be reflected on this dashboard, and you can keep everything in one place. We can see, if we needed to submit budget information or have budget information available, we can use that same tool that Amy demonstrated, Data Shuttle, to have the budget information updated and all in one place. And so I'm going to open up the schedule. All of these are clickable. I just have the tabs already open. But as we can see here, within the schedule, I can see this paperclip icon. So I know there's an attachment for this row. So again, when we think about that centralization, everything I need is here. And what's nice is this 32 and the paperclip on this row tells me that this attachment is related to this task specifically. However, for things like maybe a narrative or a chart or something like that, it's not going to be relevant to a specific row, but to the entire grant itself. And so you can also attach things to the sheet as a whole, not just a specific row. And you can upload straight from your own desktop, but you can also have links to any of these places. So again, you're all working from the same place, the same source of truth, and we're not creating duplicate versions. Multiple people can be in the sheet, and everyone's going to have the most up-to-date, accurate data. The other easy thing here to collaborate and make it easy to work across teams or even across internal and external folks is conversations. So I can mention folks. I can say, at John, what's the status? And just like we kind of saw in that automation section, John can get notified in his email. He can get notified in Smartsheet. It can also go directly to Teams or Slack. And regardless of where he responds in any of those 4 places, it will all still be tracked here. So I know in a previous life, I would do, have an email thread of updates and have 5 different versions of Excel sheets and trying to figure out how to either update the Excel or add some of those email threads as comments, but no one ever read the comments in Excel sheets. And it just gets messy really quickly. So this is an easy way to avoid all of that. The other thing with conversations is you have this tool called latest comment. So here I can see there's several comments. I may not want to go into this conversations panel every time to figure out what's the most recent update. The latest comment is going to show us every time there's a new comment, saying, thanks for the update. Anytime there's a new comment, this column is going to take that and update it. So just looking at the sheet, we'll be able to know what exactly is happening at any given time. So I click refresh and wait for it to refresh, and we can see that that has been updated there. So just an easy way to keep track of everything. And so again, being able to streamline any of your processes, whether it's qualitative or quantitative, specifically, I do want to mention kind of that budgeting piece where you can use a form if you don't want people to have access, to the sheet. Maybe they need to submit addendums or updates to the budget. But also, I know from previous experience, a lot of grantors will have their own preferred format for submitting financial updates and reports. So just like with the tool Amy showed, you can not only import data into Smartsheet, you can use that tool to export. So you can create that mapping and have it exported to a CSV that's already set up in that, funder's preferred reporting format, and have all of the data match. So you're not copying and pasting. I know previous to Smartsheet, hopefully, usually, someone would send out calendar invites of when certain deliverables or reports were due. But inevitably, you are focused on the work, and even though you know the due date is coming up, it's almost impossible just to get everything done to be able to start compiling all of that. And even if by some miracle you did get the financial reporting done, a director or someone would still be working on a PowerPoint at the 11th hour, in which case I'd get an email at 8 or 9 at night saying, I need this final chart, or I need this, please, do a final once over of this before it's submitted at 9 a.m. the next morning. So you're constantly working around the clock, especially during due dates and deliverables, because you just don't have time or bandwidth to do anything else except for operate in that kind of chaos way. By having everything in Smartsheet where you make an update in that schedule, that's reflected on the dashboard, that's reflected in your portfolio, which we'll get to. Even if I don't have time to, start compiling everything for reporting due dates, that's fine because everything is actually already updating. There shouldn't be anything that I am not already capturing and isn't updating for me. Smartsheet is going to do all of that for you. And so with that, we've kind of walked through how you can leverage both Control Center, creating and automating the generation of that fulfillment toolkit, but also core Smartsheet and dashboards to be able to collaborate on new grants. The grant dashboard creates a centralized location for all relevant materials, allowing your team to take action on critical needs and keep those schedules on track. So really, again, this is going to ensure everyone's on the same page and knows what is expected of them. And then that leads us to the really fun part, the portfolio reporting. And so being able to, as we're making updates in each of our individual grant fulfillment toolkits, that is going to affect that portfolio reporting. So let's look at an example of that. Right now, we're looking at, again, a portfolio dashboard that provides real-time visibility across all of our active grants. So I can see a breakdown of the type of grants or, what initiatives they're funding. Again, this is all customizable. You could certainly, certainly change this to meet your own needs. These are just examples, but at a high level, it's really easy to understand what's happening. this, as part of a leadership team, this allows me to gain visibility into some of the risks, and help to make sure that we can take action before things have a bigger impact. So because everything's automatically rolling up and we're not duplicating data entry, I can trust that what I'm seeing here is accurate, because we have minimized that risk of human error and eliminated the need for someone to add new grants or make updates on an ongoing basis. So if I wanted to drill down and kind of why are these grants red, or what's going on here? Again, we talk about self-service and easy to use. I can click on this report where right now we're looking at all of our grants by status, but I could just as easily change this to look at by health. If I can spell, there we go. And 2 clicks, the data resorts, and now I can quickly understand what's going on, high-level information about each of these grants, and do I need to drill down? Do I need to click into their individual dashboards and go even deeper to figure out what's happening here? And so then also I can use this dashboard to quickly see what conversations I need to have with other leaders. So for example, if I'm looking at this, I can see, grants aligned with public safety are further along in their budget than they should be. So this can prompt me to talk to leaders assigned to those grants. I can quickly see Nguyen is leading this. I can also click on that dashboard specifically for public safety grants. And now I can start to get a complete picture for what is happening specifically with this subsection of grants. And, do we need to get ahead of things? How do we make sure that things that are teetering don't have a greater negative impact than they should? And then another key advantage, if I keep scrolling, is being able to map everything to the calendar. So here I've got a report that is showing me all deliverables across all of our grants. So I can see when these due dates are coming up towards a timeline. And I can also have that kind of different visibility mapped of, for specific grants, what's not started, but is coming up and I need to get ahead of, or what can I take off my plate or rearrange, or, maybe we need to ask for an extension. So I know, in my previous life, I would spend so much time color coding my calendar and trying to figure out when things would become due. And inevitably, someone would get an email about a change in a due date, and not on purpose, but would forget to share that information with the rest of the class. And so now we're all operating on different schedules, and there's a fire drill because the due date is sooner and we didn't know about it. And now everyone's scrambling. With Smartsheet, having everything in this connected environment, you can, as one person makes a change, that's reflected everywhere. So you're always going to be operating under the same assumptions with the same data that you can trust and is accurate. So we can also look at a budget dashboard to kind of, again, see this type of portfolio visibility, but from a budget standpoint and thinking about long-term planning. It's really important to understand, again, that pipeline to see what do we have incoming, but also what's active, or is there a category that's not performing well that we need to take a look at? So we can also look at, some of these breakdowns by distribution. We can look at funding by actual versus proposed, so that we can be really realistic about what else can we take on? What other, departments are being impacted by this pipeline? And so as a portfolio leader, this can really help me feel good about what projects we're taking on, or what, grants we're working on. That can also help us inform making, do we need to, apply for different grants, or seek more funding so that we can get more applicants to have a greater impact. But again, having this visibility is really going to allow you to make an impact and to make your data actionable. So it's not just that everything's here, it's what can you do with this data? And then the last piece here that I want to touch on, when we think about scale and growth, is global updates. So with Control Center, again, we've spun up our toolkit, and that toolkit for grant fulfillment is going to automatically be connected to our portfolio. But what happens if there's a different metric that we haven't been capturing that we need to? Global updates is going to allow you to push those changes into not only that toolkit blueprint so that all future projects are now capturing that metric, but it's also going to push out that change to all active projects. So if, for example, you've got 100 active grants and there's a new metric you want to capture, that means that you have to update the sheet because you need a column to capture that data in the first place. You're most likely going to need to update a report to have that column added and included in the report. And you're also going to need to update the dashboard, at least one, maybe two, to have that metric reflected and visible. So that's 3 different places at a minimum, times 100 grants. That's 300 places you need to make an update. It's certainly doable. Smartsheet's no-code platform. It's not incredibly difficult, but it is extremely time consuming. And so global updates is going to allow you to make those changes very quickly, very efficiently, so that as you evolve and your processes evolve, this solution is going to grow with you and not get stale and sit on the shelf. So we go back to our roadmap here. What we've seen is how you can really use these dashboards to create portfolio visibility and create meaningful reporting that's going to allow you to stay on top of key dates across your entire grant management system, and then use that data to drive strategic decisions. So if we go back to our PowerPoint, and just to recap kind of some of those challenges that we listed in the beginning, information silos, manual processes, data errors, collaboration, visibility. Smartsheet is really going to create that single source of truth. It's going to create a centralized location where everyone's working from the same page and under the same assumptions. It's going to be really easy to provide that visibility both internally and externally, because with Smartsheet, you can embed dashboards, you can share information really easily, and you can set up those automations so that you're both always collecting the right data, but you're also pushing out the right data, and everyone has what they need to be successful and make sure your grants are delivered on time with an impact positively affecting your communities. And so with that, I will stop sharing and pause for questions.
Perfect. Angie, thank you so much for that. There were a few patterns, so I'll give you a kind of multi-part question here. Passing to you, since you know this solution inside and out, and I think your commentary is a little bit better than my thoughts here. A lot of folks were asking the template sets that inspired the solution that you showed. So if you could take a moment to explain where you began and sort of how you built it out, just in sort of layman's terms there. And then importantly, a few questions on how Control Center factored into that. Feel free to reshare your screen if any of those visuals would help, but essentially going from where they can start to some of the things that led to what you showed here.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me get out of this and I'll get to the Lucid. Oops. There we go. And I'll scroll out. Oops. So first, in terms of kind of what template sets I thought of when creating this, was, and this was not my creation by any means, this was a group effort. But part of it was the PMO template set, Project Management Office. That is one that is going to most likely simulate a Control Center scenario where you have a project toolkit and also a portfolio reporting capability. And so that's kind of a baby step into Control Center. It's a manual way to replicate some of this. And then the other parts are a little bit contract management, that use case, that template set in there. But a lot of it really is just conversations with customers, seeing what their requirements are. I worked recently with University of Alabama, their Water Institute, they're receiving federal funding, but then also managing the application for, sub-grants, and they have a multi-step approval process for their grantees. And then my own experience having worked with state education agencies and kind of helping them with allocating funds and seeing what some of those reporting requirements are. And then also having pretty much my entire career prior to Smartsheet worked in a place that is always funded by grants. And so being acutely aware of my salary is tied to grants. And so being able to understand the reporting requirements, both the narrative and the impact, but then also the budget piece, because that is ultimately, what's gonna drive future budget as well. So I don't know if that answers that question. I'm happy to clarify if people want to put more questions in the Q&A. And then in terms of where Control Center comes in, one is probably more relevant if you are applying for your own grants versus if you're doling out sub-grants and acting as the grantor. But the first one, if you are applying for grants, is that application toolkit. So anytime you've identified that there is a grant that you want to apply for, creating a very simple toolkit compared to the fulfillment one anyway, of here's our schedule that's going to track all of our due dates. So that means that we need to have our LOI in by this date. That means that we need to have, a budget plan by this date. And that means that we're going to have some internal meetings and approvals to create kind of what we want this grant to be. So creating some visibility and structure around the application process. And then the other way that's probably a little bit more applicable to a wider audience is the fulfillment toolkit. So once a grant has been awarded, and this can be used both for if you are receiving funds and managing your own grants, but also you could create this and share it with your grantees. If you want them to use this format to provide updates, you could absolutely do that, where for every grant or sub-grant, you are going to have a dashboard that's going to have those key metrics. And so what Control Center does is it automates that process. When we've got our intake sheet, let's see, here we go. When we've got our intake sheet, basically Control Center is going to say, okay, great, this is approved, this is ready to launch. For each one of these, I want this toolkit created automatically, and it's going to pull the data from that intake sheet and automatically parse it out to each one of these so that I don't have to retype the grant name in 10 different places. Control Center is going to do that for me. So we not only are automating the process and creating, some speed and efficiency, we're also eliminating that human/manual element of potential typos so that it is always going to be accurate. There's not an extra zero added when there shouldn't be, things like that. Did those answer those questions?
Yes, thank you, Angie. We'll see from the audience if there's a bit more to hear there. I wanted to answer a question that came in much earlier. We saw a lot of examples from Angie about icons and navigation. And obviously, as she mentioned, she had multiple tabs open across the top, but she was drilling in and out of various dashboards as she went. Someone had a great question of, can you have a dashboard with different pages and a menu bar? A lot of folks have done that sort of thing. We actually have a specific capability that brings those pages together. I don't believe we've included that in any part of today's demonstration, but wanted to comment that if you'd like to have multiple pages, all of them dashboards, and you're navigating them, very often we're bringing that together in a work app. That is a feature that if it's available to you, you're going to see it on that left-hand rail. Looks sort of like 4 diamonds. It's a way of assembling and disseminating a Smartsheet solution in that more app-like fashion, not just mobile optimized, but that's sort of all in one place. Your permissions are in one place. Go through it. It's a little bit older and a little tougher to maintain if you're just doing all the icons in the dashboard. We certainly do it when it's simple and suits our needs, but odds are, Lisa, you're going to be the most interested in something in the form of work apps with a series of dashboards. Other than that, Tim and I have just been going through and answering the more specific or unique questions to the best of our ability. Not sure if any of them have stood out. We can wait a few more moments, see if anything's going to come in from the rest of the group before moving on.
I do want to, I'll quickly point out that at the end of the showcase, there will be a QR slide that will take you to a survey for feedback, but there will also be a question to ask for contact from your account team. So if you have questions, if you're looking for, how do I take this to the next step? Who do I get in contact with? That'll be a really easy way to get that started.
And then I think Tim already put this in the chat, but if you are monitoring any of the Q&A, that question around template sets, Tim had put in a couple links to some older ones that were initially created for higher ed grant management, but very similar process and definitely applicable, as well as that contract and vendor management one that we mentioned as well. Okay, I know we're a little early for, I think Bob's session on security was going to start at 10:40. So I don't know if people have more questions, or we can maybe start that session a little bit early.
Yeah, Angie, I'm happy to go ahead and jump in and get moving.
Excellent.
So great. Well, with that being said, appreciate it, Angie, and obviously feel free to keep asking questions in the Q&A. Our excellent staff will continue to monitor those. So if there's follow-ups on anything that you heard during any of the previous sessions that come to mind as we're going through some of the security background, we're obviously happy to continue to answer those as well. But with that being said, my name's Bob. I'm a security solutions engineer here with Smartsheet, and looking forward to talking to everybody today about how Smartsheet is able to help keep your data secure and how you are able to use certain elements within Smartsheet to do the same. And with that, actually, let me go ahead and share my screen. And it should be popping up here momentarily. And looks like we're good to go. So again, we'll go ahead and, awesome, thank you. And we'll go ahead and jump into that here now. So the first thing that I always like to make sure that I tell people is that regardless of the type of plan that you've elected to enter into with Smartsheet, there are plenty of things that we're doing on the back end to make sure that we are keeping your data secure within the Smartsheet platform. That includes things like encryption of your data, whether that's occurring while the data is in transit, using HTTPS with TLS 1.2, and also with data at rest. So we are encrypting all data that's at rest within our platform using AES 256-bit encryption. We also have numerous security controls that are in place within our environment. We do use AWS as our hosting provider. They are certainly one of the leaders in overall cloud offerings that you can get anywhere in the world, and that includes a number of robust security features as well. So we do use things like VPCs, security groups, firewalls, all that sort of stuff is in place within the environment, and those are things that we are doing to protect your data, again, regardless of the type of plan that you have within Smartsheet. But we do know that certain customers, and certainly state and local governments, fall very well into the category of needing to make sure that they have certain controls in place on the front end that they can configure to make sure that Smartsheet is able to both fit the business use cases that you have as well as the security use cases. So when you move to our enterprise plan, you do get access to some premium security features, such as the ability to set up approved domain sharing, turn on single sign-on, allow custom welcome screen so that your users, when they are entering into the Smartsheet platform for the first time, understand what are the appropriate ways that they are supposed to use this platform. So all of those things are certainly valid, able to be used for you within your enterprise plan. And then we do have a premium security tier on top of that, whether you're in the Smartsheet Advanced Platinum tier or you elect to add Smartsheet Safeguard onto your enterprise plan. There are some extra capabilities that you can get as well, which is primarily what we're going to be diving into today. So those include your own customer managed encryption keys, the ability to set up specific data egress policies, data retention controls on the data sitting in your Smartsheet environment, and then also the event reporting feed, which allows you to connect user data from what is going on within the Smartsheet platform into your own CASB or SIM tool, and better be able to aggregate your all of your logs together where you're probably already collating certain logs across the system as well. So jumping right into it, I'm going to start with event reporting. This is a feature that is going to, again, allow you to take the logs that are being generated from within Smartsheet as it relates to what people are doing in the Smartsheet environment and put those back into your own SIM or CASB tool. And that's really the big thing that I like to make sure customers understand about the event reporting feed is that you do need to have a tool already in place in your environment that can accept JSON formatted data. Now, JSON format's one of the most common types of data structure formats that you can get, and therefore this is compatible with a very wide variety of tooling within your system. But again, make sure that you do have that in place and that it can accept a JSON feed. And essentially what it is just a premium API endpoint that you're going to call from that SIM or that CASB tool. And it's going to give you data structured in the way that you see on the right-hand side of the screen. So you're going to get information that tells you when a user has created a sheet, created a workspace, deleted an attachment out of the system, elected to share an item. All of those things are generated as part of event reporting. And then you're able to set up alerts within that tooling that you have in place already to flag your IT security team when certain things occur. And whether that is a share of a specific sheet in your system, maybe you know there's a couple of sheets that have very, very sensitive information, and you need to make sure that you know every time a share occurs on that sheet, you can feed that into event reporting and get alerted on that. If you need to know that attachments are being uploaded, I certainly work with plenty of Smartsheet customers that very strictly regulate the creation of workspaces within their environment. You can create a flag to let you know anytime a user creates a new workspace. So a lot of flexibility is available for you within this event reporting feed. And it is one of those things that's, again, highly customizable that you're able to take into your own environment and then make sure that you've got it configured in the way that's going to best support your usage of the Smartsheet platform. Moving on from there, we do offer the ability for you to configure data egress policies within your system. And this is really going to allow you to restrict how people might potentially be pulling data out of the Smartsheet platform once you have given them access. And so you can see on the left-hand side of the screen those actions that you're going to be able to prevent: saving a sheet as new or as a template, being able to publish a sheet if you have publishing turned on. You can further restrict that through the data egress policies, and then maybe only a certain subset of your users are allowed to publish. The ability to print or export an item is something that can be restricted as well. And these things apply both to your internal and to your external users. However, one of the really cool things about data egress policies is that you can layer policies on top of each other. And in just a minute, I'm actually going to show you graphically what that looks like as you create a policy. But what this allows you to do is exempt certain groups of users from your main data egress policy. And then you're able to layer that second or that third or that fourth policy on top of that to further make sure that you're scoping that control correctly. And again, allowing security to meet the business process where it needs to be to support the way that Smartsheet is used within your environment. And so as promised, here's what that looks like. If you go in and create a data egress policy, you name it, you check the boxes that you want to restrict, and then you can see in the center of the screen where there is that exclusions group that allows you to choose if there's any groups that are going to be excluded from the policy. You can also further control that by saying, does it only apply to sheets or only reports or only to dashboards or any combination of those three? And certainly one of the use cases I see with this is that I definitely work with customers that have a subset of their users that need to be able to, let's say, export a dashboard into a PDF because they need to take that and they have a board that they report to. And so they need to be able to take that PDF and give that to the board in a static format. And so you could do that. You could create one data egress policy that is going to restrict everything, and then layer that next one over the top of it that allows you to exclude that one group of users from that policy, and create a secondary policy that allows them to be able to export that dashboard. So very flexible. One of those things that you can also use in conjunction with other security tooling that you have within your environment. Things like enforcing single sign-on or multi-factor authentication for external users, combining that with the safe sharing list and then your data egress policy on top of it, and you get some really, really good controls over your data and how it is being moved internally and externally. The third piece that I wanted to talk about in regards to the Smartsheet Safeguard offering is your ability to turn on data retention controls. And this is a feature that is designed to help make sure that you are keeping your deletion policies within Smartsheet in line with what you may have for your organization as a whole. This is a policy that's going to automatically delete items out of your system once they have reached a certain age and are no longer at use within your platform. So you're looking at things like the ability to set a policy condition that'll say, hey, an item was created a year ago or 5 years ago. It hasn't been modified in 90 days, or it hasn't been modified in a year or half year, whatever that happens to be. You can make sure that those things are automatically getting deleted out of your environment. It allows you to keep your environment nice and organized, and it removes old, stale data from your system. And the way it works is, again, you set those policy conditions. How long ago was it created? How long has it been since anybody has modified it? Then you're also able to configure how long should people get a notification before that happens. So the way it works with Smartsheet is that we will actually send an automatic email notification to the owner of the sheet prior to the deletion occurring. That can happen 3 days before, a week before, or 2 weeks before the actual deletion occurs. And you also get to configure how often does this check run. Do you want Smartsheet to run that check against your environment once a month? Do you want it twice a year? You can configure that type of cadence to tell Smartsheet how often do you want it to actually scan your environment. And then the way it works is, again, that those users are going to get emails saying, here are the sheets that are going to be deleted for your organization's data retention policy. If they see that there are sheets in there that they need to keep, it's as easy as going in, making a quick modification. It pulls it right out of that data retention policy, and it's no longer going to be deleted. Even if it does get deleted, it still just ends up in the trash can, and then you're able to quickly go into the trash and restore it if you have something that gets accidentally deleted. So it still follows the same deletion process that things would go through if you manually deleted out of your environment. So again, some good controls right there to help make sure that you are able to maintain your overall data hygiene within Smartsheet. And then the final piece of this puzzle is the customer managed encryption keys. And this is going to allow you to actually control the encryption key that's being used on your data. So again, by default, your data is going to be encrypted at rest. Whether you use customer managed encryption keys or not, we are going to use AES 256-bit encryption on your data at rest in the Smartsheet environment. The difference for here being that by default, Smartsheet is going to control those keys. We do secure key management. We make sure those keys are being rotated. All the practices that you would expect in terms of key management. But if you want to do it yourself, you absolutely can. Certain organizations have compliance requirements that make you manage your own key in any place that you can. For other organizations, it's not necessarily a compliance requirement, but it's an individual organizational preference to manage keys in any way, in anywhere that you can. So this gives you that ability to do that. It's a really nice control for you also because you can turn it on at any point that you want to. It is not something that you have to do at the beginning of your interaction with Smartsheet. You could have Smartsheet for 5 years and then decide that you would like to manage your own encryption key, and we will encrypt all of your data in the background using the key that you give us access to, and it's just the ARN. You're not giving us the entire key itself, and Smartsheet will encrypt your data in the background. Your users are not going to notice a difference with the speed in which they're able to access the data that is stored within Smartsheet. So you get the same experience on the front end. We're doing all the work on the back end for you. And by setting it up in this manner, what you're always able to do, if for whatever reason you have concerns about the data that is being stored in Smartsheet and you don't want that to be accessible anymore through the Smartsheet platform, you simply rescind Smartsheet's ability to access that encryption key that you've used. And now we can no longer decrypt the data that's being stored in the Smartsheet environment. Once you're back to feeling like things are in control, you're ready to resume your use of Smartsheet, you simply restore our access to that ARN. And once again, we can encrypt and decrypt that data as you're accessing the platform. So it just gives you that extra bit of control over what's happening in the system and your ability to control that key as well. And that's really everything that I wanted to touch on as part of this portion on security. If there's any questions that people want to toss out, more than happy to answer those as well. And looks like we don't have much on that front. John, I'm going to toss it back over your way if you are good on that side of things.
Yes, sir. I am good. Go ahead and go. Yeah, there's the QR slide. Perfect. Awesome. Hey, everyone, thank you so much for joining us today on the showcase and for the engagement and incredibly thoughtful questions throughout. I wanted to throw out a quick reminder that this everyone will receive the link to the recording. I will also go through and send out the Q&A as well. It might take a little bit more time just to clean it up because I think the Zoom file looks a little funky, but we will get that out to you. Please take a moment if you can to scan the QR code, provide some feedback for us, as well as let us know if you want to continue the conversation or have your account team reach out. I did say it at the beginning, but really want to reiterate that there really isn't a lot that Smartsheet can't do. So if your wheels are turning, if there's something that is keeping you up at night, please brainstorm with us. We are very well acclimated at working with customers side by side to evaluate and implement these types of solutions. And we are really here as a supportive partner every step along the way. So as long as there are no other questions, please have a great rest of your day, rest of your week, and thank you all again for joining us.
And I just wanted to add to, if you haven't filled out the link or filled out the survey, it's in the chat as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Angie. We'll stay on group for a few more minutes. If people have questions, don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A, but also, we know you have busy days. So, you're welcome to get on with the rest of your Tuesdays as well. Bob, can you bring the QR code back up by chance?
I sure can.
Sweet. Thank you.
Of course. Should be popping up right now.
Perfect.
Tiffany, we'll try and find who your account representative is, but also if you fill out that form, there's a question for have someone reach out to us, and we'll definitely be able to have your account representative reach out that way. And then they can talk to you about integrating some of these tools into your own instance. I think it might have been a different Tiffany. I'm not sure, but thank you for filling out the form.
Awesome, team. We'll give it another minute here, see if any other questions come in. Okay, we'll go ahead and close this out. If anyone that is still with us, if you guys have any questions, please do not hesitate. If you don't know who your account representative is, if you know who your system admin is, they'll be able to point you in the right direction. Or if you fill out the form, we will get back to you as quickly as possible as well. So thank you all again for joining us. Smartsheet team, thank you guys so much for the work you put into this. It was really fun to be a part of. So have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody, and we'll talk to you down the road.